Well, the debt ceiling is one thing, but it seems more, I don't know, with maintenance. Everybody, does play that card now and again. But I'm more interested in what happens with the big social spending bill and those inflation numbers that we saw. And Republicans are talking about how that's going to be inflationary, and we see the White House arguing it's not going to be inflationary and would actually help. So I don't know if we'll get anywhere on that. But it hasn't passed yet. What do you attribute the 9.8% PPI increase, which was the hottest in decades, and then the previous week where we saw the CPI, both hot? This is all happening way before the Build Back Better bill was even, we're still arguing about it, don't even know if it's going to pass. And we already have the inflation.
Right. Now, look, that's exactly right. And inflation is raging across the country. The November numbers have inflation at 6.8%. That's the highest inflation this country has seen since 1982, nearly 40 years ago. And it's, at the end of the day, it is not complicated. When you spend trillions of dollars you don't have, when you print money, when you borrow trillions of dollars, when you expand the money supply, you drive up inflation. That cause and effect has been true from the dawn of time. It's true now. And, you mentioned the debt ceiling. The Senate voted on yesterday. The House voted on early this morning. The current debt is $28.9 trillion. Today, Joe Biden is preparing to sign a bill raising that by $2.5 trillion. $2.5 trillion, Joe, is the largest increase in the debt ceiling in the history of our country. It is unprecedented. $2.5 trillion with the stroke of a pen, and that doesn't pay for a penny of the Bernie Sanders socialist budget, what they call Build Back Better, what more and more Americans are calling Build Back Broke. It is trillions more, somewhere between $3, $4, $5 trillion on top of the $2.5 trillion, on top of the $28.9 trillion. The inflation fire is raging, and the Democrats' solution, sadly, is just to pour gasoline on it. They want more of what's causing inflation, and if they succeed with that, we're going to get a whole lot more inflation, which is hurting the most vulnerable among us, particularly seniors. Seniors get hammered with inflation, and this White House doesn't seem to care.
Senator, we have people complain. We have the Republicans come on, talk about this spending bill. Democrats come on and will immediately point out the Trump tax cuts, which weren't, in their view, the Democrats would say, weren't paid for, didn't pay for themselves. Tax cuts for the rich, you're okay voting for that and increasing the deficit since it wasn't paid for your rich buddies and corporations. But now we're trying to do get some child care and tax credits, things like that for families, and you're against that. How would you explain that you are for one and totally against this one?
Well, sure. One's good for the economy, one's terrible for the economy. It's actually, you're right. You're repeating the talking points back that the Democrats tell you. If you look at the 2017 tax cut, that tax cut was focused on jobs. It was focused on reducing tax cuts on job creators. And the purpose of it was to create more jobs, to drive up wages, to bring manufacturing back to America. And it worked extraordinarily well. We saw by 2019, we had the lowest rate of unemployment in 40 years. We had the lowest rate of African-American unemployment ever recorded, the lowest rate of Hispanic unemployment ever recorded. We had median wages rising. We had poverty dropping. It succeeded. And by the way, their line that it wasn't paid for, when we cut taxes in 2017, the next year, federal tax revenue went up. And the next year, federal tax revenue went up. And it went up every year after that. So it generated more revenue because of growth and economic productivity and more jobs. Contrast that with the Build Back Broke. There's actually a big tax cut in Build Back Broke, but it's a tax cut for Democratic donors. It's a tax cut for millionaires and billionaires in big blue states, because one of the most expensive part of the bill is they repeal the cap on deducting state and local taxes. Now, contrast the two. The 2017 tax cuts focused on job creators, more jobs for working men and women. The Democrats repealing the SALT deduction doesn't create a single job, but I'll tell you what it does. It pays off the rich Democratic donors in blue states, number one. And number two, it encourages local politicians to raise taxes more. The Democrats are not fighting for working men and women. They're not fighting for the senior citizen who's on Social Security, who's got a fixed budget, who with inflation now is seeing the cost of food going through the roof, is seeing the cost of gasoline go through the roof, the cost of houses and cars and mortgages and rent, all of that going through the roof. Giving a tax giveaway to billionaires who are Democratic donors doesn't benefit them at all, but it's what the Democratic priority is. They take care of their buddies in government, and they don't fight for working men and women. We ought to be focused on working men and women, which means we ought to be bringing jobs back. This bill, the Bernie Sanders socialist budget, destroys jobs because the Democrats' approach to this is higher taxes, higher regulations on job creators, and then they wonder, they scratch their heads and they're confused why the jobs go away.